Today we're talking about Stephen Lawrence. In April 1993, Stephen was with his friend waiting for a bus in Eltham when he was brutally murdered in an unprovoked and racially motivated attack by 6 white boys. Following the attack, Stephen and his friend managed to run. However, Stephen didn't get very far because he had been stabbed and he'd collapsed. His friend flagged a passing police car, who then called an ambulance to assist Stephen. However, when he arrived at the hospital, Stephen was pronounced dead from his stab wounds. Following Stephen's murder, the suspects were identified very quickly because witnesses were coming forward to provide their name and their identities, as they were a gang that were operating in Eltham and they had previously been terrorizing their neighborhood and also attacking other people in racially motivated attacks. However, the police were slow to follow up or respond. In terms of the investigation into Stephen's murder, the family had already experienced a traumatic and horrific situation by way of the murder of Stephen. However, the criminal justice system was failing them in all ways possible. The investigation into Stephen's murder was horrific. I mean, even if for people who weren't their family, just to see how they were handling the situation and not really caring much for Stephen or his family, and also trying to get justice for them. At one point, the police actually put surveillance in one of the ringleaders' homes to try and get a video and audio from them, just so they can have some evidence. Those videos show that the suspect were talking about Stephen's murder and actually bragging. Still, the police did nothing. The 6 white suspects were finally taken to court. Their court case was just like a mockery of Stephen and the family, which was horrific to watch. It was like no regard for Stephen or his family. At that trial, they were acquitted of the murder, so they weren't held accountable. However, Stephen's parents were relentless in terms of trying to seek justice for Stephen. It took the family 18 years before 2 out of the 6 suspects were convicted of murder. Stephen's murder happened in 1993, and because the 6 suspects had a trial, they couldn't retry them because there was a system called double jeopardy in the UK, meaning that if you were tried the first time for the same crime, you couldn't be tried again. However, in 2005, there was a partial movement in terms of that double jeopardy law, and if new evidence was provided, that the suspect could be tried again. And that's how the 2 were convicted, Gary Dobson and David Norris. Out of all of them, these are the only 2 who have paid for Stephen's murder. Gary Dobson and David Norris were convicted in 2012. So it's a really long wait for justice for the family, but they were relentless in getting it, and rightly so. Throughout the investigation into Stephen's murder, it came to light that the Met Police were institutionally racist in terms of how Stephen's case was handled. They were looking to smear the family. Out of all of the 6 suspects in Stephen's murder, only 1 has admitted having some part of it, and that was in March 2025 when David Norris admitted to being a part of the gang that attacked Stephen and murdered him. In October 2025, David Norris was up for parole, and at that point he apologized to Stephen's parents and tried to make the excuse that he was young and in a gang when the murder of Stephen was perpetrated, and had the audacity to ask Stephen's parents and family to forgive him for his part in the murder. However, Stephen's parents have asked that he provide detail of who the other suspects were in the murder, because they were 6 to start with. Only 2 have been convicted. Norris would not disclose that information, provide them who the other suspects were, citing that his life and his family's lives will be in danger if he provided that information. There is some speculation that the only reason why he's come forward and admitted and trying to show remorse for his involvement in Stephen's murder because he would like to be released on license from prison, and also that his remorse may just be not for Stephen but for himself, and also to try and secure his freedom. He hasn't provided any further information. to Stephen's parents or family with regards to who else was involved in the murder. And so out of the 6, 4 of the suspects have walked away and haven't faced justice for Stephen's murder. 2 of them have been convicted, but it was 2 out of 6. Not great in terms of the police and the investigations that they were conducting, because to this day they're still getting recommendations on their institutional racism that the minorities still encounter today. Stephen's parents have also stated that they think Norris is still a danger to the public, because there has been some reports that while in prison he's been involved with some extremist groups. More than 32 years on, and the criminal justice system is still failing Stephen and his family, because not all of the suspects have been brought to justice to pay for the life of Stephen that they've taken away.